Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is Pro-Revenge Story. This happened around 2015 when I joined a tech startup. We agreed on a salary with no paid overtime and an evaluation in 3 months and then annually. Pretty standard stuff. The salary was mediocre for the work, but I really loved the job itself, which was extremely interesting and challenging. Even with the so-so finances, I felt I'd develop valuable skills for my future career. After 3 years, with 10 solid clients, several trial customers, and money flowing in, the conversation shifted to back pay and paid overtime plus compensation for past overtime. By that point, I'd accrued around $65,000 in overtime, which is substantial. Legally, it couldn't be classified as back pay, so we always discussed it as a discretionary bonus. Everyone seemed fine with this arrangement, including me. These discussions happened in writing through company emails, so I felt secure and didn't suspect any bad intentions. I believed the company could afford the payment, but I was also open to accepting equity at a discount, which was legally possible in our jurisdiction, if cash flow was tight. "We value your contribution enormously," said Mark, our CEO, during one of our meetings. "The company wouldn't be where it is without your dedication." "I appreciate that," I replied. "I've put my heart into this place, and some recognition for all those late nights would mean a lot." "Absolutely," he nodded. "We just need to figure out the best approach." The discussions about back pay and potential equity started to drag on, and I was getting increasingly frustrated. Eventually, I was offered equity at a valuation that was completely unreasonable, in the hundreds of millions, for a company with 9 employees and projected annual revenue of around $3 million. I'd get less than 0.01% stake. It was clearly an attempt to avoid paying me what I was owed. "This offer is insulting," I told Mark bluntly during our meeting. "We both know what the company is actually worth." "This is the best we can do," he replied coldly. "Take it or leave it." The day he made that offer, I handed in my resignation. This sent Jared, our CTO, into panic mode because the CEO had refused an updated contract, and I was still on a 1-month notice period, plus had accumulated significant unused paid leave. Essentially, I could walk out immediately. "You can't be serious," Jared said, following me to my desk. "We have the Peterson project launching next week." "I'm afraid that's not my problem anymore," I replied, packing my things. "Maybe you should talk to Mark about why this is happening." So, off I went that very same day, to the shock and surprise of everyone. The next day, I sent an official, registered letter requesting my overtime payment and received a negative response, which I followed up with another detailed demand. This was also rejected because the bonus was discretionary and there is no overtime. However, I'd been seeking legal advice and understood they didn't have a leg to stand on if I was willing to pay for an attorney. The liability in such matters falls 100% on the employer, and I was prepared to pursue it. You need to understand that hiring lawyers for employment disputes was uncommon in our area back then, so companies rarely expected this outcome. While reviewing applicable laws with my attorney, I noticed there was a limitation period of 7 years. As my attorney was explaining how to get my money in as little as a few weeks, I asked, "What if we wait until it's 6 years and 11 months after the violation and then file demanding interest?" My reasoning was that the law mandated back pay at 9% APR above the base rate, 2.75% at that time, accrued daily for every day past the due date. We were looking at roughly 11.75% compound daily APR. The risk was that the company might fold during that time, but I decided it was worth it. I sent one final letter stating that I expected all owed and accrued amounts to date to be paid immediately. Predictably, nothing happened. Life continued for the next few years. The company grew and became established in the industry. When the time came in 2022, I found an attorney and initiated the case. We had copies of all communications, registered letters, and responses. The back pay demanded now, including interest, was $138,000. What I hadn't realized was that there were also fixed penalties for each instruction to perform uncompensated overtime. The total demand came to approximately $165,000. Mark, still the CEO, completely lost it when he received the court documents. I got an extremely abusive phone call which I recorded as I had anticipated this reaction and added to the filing. "You ungrateful piece of garbage," he shouted. "After everything we did for you, you're trying to bankrupt us with this ridiculous claim." "I'm simply asking for what I'm legally owed, plus interest," I replied calmly. "This could have been resolved years ago for much less. I'll fight this to my last breath," he threatened. "You'll never see a penny." Mark fought hard, but when the judge heard the recorded phone call, his opinion of the defense immediately soured. Reviewing all the communication only strengthened my case. The judge ruled in my favor and instructed the company to pay immediately and without delay. and also ordered them to cover all my legal costs. They were also subjected to a full audit from the Department of Labor. The company paid in full a week later. To add insult to injury, the evening of the court decision, Mark apparently got extremely drunk and crashed his car into another vehicle. He received a DUI conviction, lost his driver's license for 8 months, and his insurance refused to pay for the damages to his vehicle, a brand new Tesla Model S, since he was intoxicated. All in all, a glorious day. The next one is an entitled people story. So, this happened when I bought my first house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it had a decent backyard and the price was right for a single guy just starting his career. The house came with all the usual paperwork, including a survey that clearly marked property boundaries. I filed it away with the closing documents without paying much attention. Big mistake. My neighbor to the right seemed friendly enough initially. She was probably in her 50s, always perfectly dressed, with that particular way of speaking that suggested she was used to getting what she wanted. Let's call her Karen. For the first few months, everything was fine. We'd wave, exchange pleasantries about the weather, typical neighbor stuff. Her house was bigger than mine, built about 10 years earlier, with an impressive deck stretching along the entire back. I actually admired it. The problem started when I decided to put up a fence along my property lines. The first step was locating my property markers, which meant digging out that survey I'd filed away. That's when I discovered the issue. According to the survey, Karen's deck extended about 3 feet onto my property, roughly 200 square feet of her deck sitting on my land. I thought there might be an error, so I hired a professional surveyor to verify the boundaries. The surveyor confirmed it. Karen's deck was definitely on my property, and had been for years. The previous owner either hadn't noticed or hadn't cared enough to address it. I'm generally easygoing and don't look for trouble. I figured this was something we could work out like adults. Maybe she didn't realize the deck crossed the property line, or there was some informal agreement with the previous owner we could formalize. I walked over with the survey and surveyor's report one Saturday morning. Karen answered in her usual pristine outfit, a matching jogging suit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I explained the situation politely, showed her the documents, and suggested we figure out a solution together. Maybe she could purchase that strip of land, or we could work out some other arrangement. Karen's response wasn't what I expected. She barely glanced at the survey before handing it back with a dismissive wave. She told me her deck had been there over 10 years, that she'd invested thousands, and she wasn't about to tear it down just because some new neighbor was trying to cause problems. I tried explaining this wasn't about causing problems. It was about property rights and proper documentation, but Karen had made up her mind. She informed me that possession was 9/10 of the law, and since her deck had been there so long, it was basically hers now. That wasn't how property law worked, but I didn't argue. I figured she needed time to process the information. Over the next few weeks, I tried several approaches. I offered to split the cost of moving the deck. I suggested a long-term lease arrangement. I even offered to sell her that portion at a very reasonable price. Every conversation went the same way. Karen would listen with this smug smile, then dismiss my concerns with increasingly condescending responses. She started referring to me as that difficult neighbor and made comments about how some people couldn't mind their own business. The breaking point came 2 months later. I had saved enough to start my fence project and needed to mark where posts would go. This meant spray painting the actual property line, which ran right through Karen's deck. I was out early Saturday morning, carefully measuring and marking the boundary when Karen came storming out in her bathrobe and slippers, absolutely furious. She demanded to know what I was doing spray painting lines all over her property. I calmly explained I was marking my property line for fence installation, and the paint was only on my side of the boundary. Karen's face turned red. She said I had no right marking anything near her deck, that I was harassing her, and she'd call police if I didn't stop this nonsense immediately. That's when she made the demand that would haunt her. Karen pointed her finger at my face and said if I had such a problem with her deck, then I should just build my fence right where I claimed the property line was. She dared me to do it, saying it would prove to everyone how unreasonable I was being. She was certain I wouldn't actually build a fence through her deck because it would be too expensive and troublesome. She figured this was all bluff, and calling it would end the dispute. I looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. I told her that was exactly what I planned to do, and I appreciated her support for my fence project. The smug smile on her face should have warned me she still didn't understand what she'd agreed to. I spent the next week getting permits and hiring a fence contractor. I wanted everything done by the book. I pulled permits for a fence along my exact property line, submitted the surveyor's report, and got city approval. The contractor was puzzled when I showed him where the fence needed to go. He asked if I was sure about the placement since it meant building through the neighbor's deck. I showed him the survey and permits and told him the neighbor had specifically requested the fence be built along the property line. Construction started Monday morning. The crew arrived early and began setting up equipment along the marked property line. That's when Karen realized what was happening. She came running out in her bathrobe again, screaming about how we couldn't be serious. The contractor calmly explained he was building a fence along the property line as specified in the permits with all paperwork in order. Karen demanded to see the permits. When shown them, she saw they clearly stated the fence would be built along the surveyed property line with all city approvals obtained. That's when reality hit her. Building the fence along the actual property line meant roughly 3 feet of her deck would be on my side of the fence. The part sitting on my land would be completely separated from the rest of her deck and house. She'd have to walk around the fence onto my property just to access that section. But it got worse. Since that portion was now on my side of the fence, it was technically an unauthorized structure on my property. The city inspector reviewing the installation pointed out that Karen would need my written permission to keep any structure on my land, and without it, the structure was an illegal encroachment. The inspector explained that if the encroaching structure wasn't removed within 30 days, the city could issue citations and fines. Karen spent 2 weeks frantically calling lawyers, but property law is clear about these situations. The deck was on my land, I'd never given permission, and I was under no legal obligation to allow it to remain. Her final attempt was demanding I move my fence to accommodate her deck. She claimed it was the neighborly thing to do. I reminded Karen she had specifically demanded I build the fence along the property line, and I was simply complying with her request. I had offered several compromise solutions months earlier, all rejected with that same smug attitude. The fence was completed on schedule and looked great. A solid 6-foot privacy fence along my entire property line. The 3-foot section of Karen's deck on my side looked awkward and isolated. Karen had 2 choices: tear down the encroaching section or face daily fines for maintaining an illegal structure on someone else's property. She chose to tear it down. The demolition took 2 days and cost several $1,000s. The remaining deck looked unbalanced and incomplete, requiring additional work to make it structurally sound. After all that expense and aggravation, Karen approached me with a much humbler attitude, asking if we could work out some arrangement. I reminded her I had offered reasonable solutions months earlier, all rejected. Now that she'd learned about property law the hard way, maybe she'd be more interested in acting neighborly. We eventually worked out a deal where she purchased a small strip of my land along the boundary, giving her space to rebuild her deck properly on her own property. The price was higher than my original offer, but she wasn't in position to negotiate. Karen learned an expensive lesson about checking property boundaries before construction and working with neighbors instead of against them. Her smugness disappeared after writing several large checks to fix her mistake. As for me, I got a great fence, a fair price for the land I sold, and the satisfaction of watching arrogance backfire spectacularly. Sometimes the best response to an unreasonable demand is complying with it exactly as requested. The neighborhood is quieter now, and Karen keeps to herself mostly. She waves politely when we see each other, but gone are the days of condescending lectures and smug dismissals. Funny how a simple fence can change someone's entire attitude. The next one is a petty revenge story. 2 years ago, I drove into a parking lot with my wife and kids. There seemingly was only one place left, but a BMW was towed in at the front and left almost no room. I talked to the attendant and she said that was the last spot. The system handles capacity automatically. So I carefully drove in and parked. About 3 cm from the other car, I had to get out of mine through the passenger side. When we went to leave, the BMW was gone and 2 of my tires were flat. I called the parking attendant over and showed her. She called her manager, who said they'd send someone within the hour. My wife and the kids took a taxi home, and I stayed there waiting, but I was pissed and called the police and asked the manager for the video. They would have given me the video without an official police complaint, so I made one, and the manager then had me contact their legal department to take it from there. A few minutes after finishing up all of this police and legal stuff, the mechanic showed up, filled my tires, and I went home. I had to hound the parking company for almost 3 months until they sent the police a copy of the video. 3 times. The first time it was the wrong camera, and the second it was the right camera but wrong time frame. Once the police had the full video, I was able to amend my original complaint to vandalism and directly identify the guy that did it from the camera and license plate. A few more months and I get a letter inviting me to an arbitration. I reply refusing and say that this will be handled through the judicial system. I add this arbitration offer to my complaint. A week later, I get a call from Daddy's lawyer offering me a few thousand souls to forget about this. The kid was mad and made a mistake. I should be reasonable, not let this go too far, etc. I tell him no to everything and ask to not be contacted again. A few more weeks go by. I think this would be about 6 months after the incident, and I get a court date 11 months in the future. Foreclosure, January of this year. Every couple of months, I get a call with different offers from different lawyers to drop the case, all of which I make sure to amend to the case documentation. When the court date finally comes, the guy is there with Daddy and their lawyer, and me with mine. They make one last effort to work out a deal, but I deny again. The case is over pretty quickly as the video is horribly damning to this guy's case. You can clearly see him walk up, look at my car, make a few angry gestures, then pull out his car, get out, and deflate my tires. There wasn't much he could say in his defense. The adjudication goes in my favor, and the verdict is common vandalism and is assigned 50 days fine at 50%, which works out to around $1,700 USD plus 90 days of home arrest. They appealed, but this was thrown out a few weeks ago, and just last week I got the news that the verdict is now final. The payment deadline has been set to October 10th of this year, or else home arrest becomes jail time. They called yesterday asking for my bank account and to aid the transfer today. So Monday I'm reporting payment received and the end of this 2-year journey. So Martin, I don't know if you use Reddit or not, but enjoy your home arrest, and too bad your university doesn't accept home arrest as a valid excuse and you'll lose all credits this cycle. Maybe think about that next time you want to screw with someone else's stuff. The next one is a malicious compliance story. If you've read my last few posts in this subreddit, they all seem to deal with truck driving. This one is shorter, but no different. I mainly drove central and eastern PA, southern New York, New Jersey, Delaware, northeast Maryland, and sometimes eastern Ohio, and southern Connecticut and Virginia. Unfortunately, that region puts me in several cities: Philadelphia, Wilmington, New York, Richmond, and Baltimore, as well as slightly smaller cities like Harrisburg, Trenton, Dover, Newark, and everything in between. The thing to realize as a driver in the city is people hate or don't care about trucks. In their mind, we are just a large, slow-moving annoyance and something to get around so they can get their latte and go about their day. They don't realize the danger of cutting off trucks or stopping short in front of one at speed, or that I can't always see you while driving or backing. So as a truck driver, you are always on alert for danger. Initially, I hated driving in the cities, but eventually got used to it. I would be backing up slowly to enter or exit an ally, and people would pull up and park directly behind me, or walk directly behind the truck. You learn to judge each situation on a case-by-case basis. Usually, your best-case scenario is to keep going slow till you are 100% sure you're going to hit something, then stop if absolutely necessary. Case in point, I'm loaded with roofing materials for a commercial roofing job. I am driving our largest truck in the fleet, a twin-stick Mack with a 42-feet boom crane. This thing was big. It had wide flotation tires on the front axle. If you don't know what they are, they generally are twice the width and diameter of regular truck tires and tend to float on a dirt surface rather than sink in like a normal tire would due to the extra large footprint. The upside is they were able to support much more weight without sinking in the ground. The downside is turning radius. This truck was 20 feet shorter than an 18-wheeler with a 53-feet trailer, but had the same turning radius. So, this one day in 1997, I am headed to a delivery just outside of Phila, Upper Darby to be exact. I'm at a high-traffic signaled intersection traveling south, and I have to turn right to head east. Each corner had 2 straight-through right turn lanes, one in each direction, and dedicated left turn lane, signaled. As normal, I approach the red light, stopping about 50 feet short of the light. Once the left turn lane clears, I can then swing left before turning right. This is the proper way to make a turn of this nature. A lot of times I see trucks turn right from the left turn lane, and that is illegal, and wrong because it allows traffic to come up on your right side. The proper way is to approach in the right lane, swing wide left when clear, then turn right. However, I notice as I am waiting for the lights to do their thing, and my opportunity to make my turn, this lady pulls well over the white line of the left turn lane on the east side of the intersection. So, as traffic clears and I make the turn, I cannot complete it because she is too far forward in her lane. So I have to stop mid-turn, for those unaware. At major intersections, there's a thick white line painted across the intersection, defining where you are supposed to stop if the light is red. This allows trucks and emergency equipment to make the turn as needed. This helps keep traffic flowing. Now back to the story. I signal to the lady to back up so I can complete the turn, and she signals back no. She is the only car there, no one behind her. I signal again, and she furiously signals no. Malicious compliance initiated. I put the truck in neutral, set the brakes, shut the engine off, and just sit there. Traffic in the north and southbound lanes are squeezing behind the truck. Eastbound can only turn right, and no other traffic can move. She can't move. I can't move. I'm paid by the hour. She is not. A few light cycles go by and traffic is completely jammed. Of course, the police were called. I could tell by the cop's demeanor that it was reported that a truck was blocking the intersection, because the first thing he did when he got there was to order me to back up. Here's the rub. As a truck driver, if I back up and hit anything, I am liable no matter the circumstance, even with someone guiding me. Hence, a police officer cannot legally tell me to back up. So I tell him no. He then tucks tail and orders the lady to back up, and she argues with the cop. I could not hear what was said, but I imagine the word ticket was involved, which she qualified for disobeying traffic control devices. Finally, she backs up as I start up the truck again and complete my turn in the allotted space. I never saw her or the cop again, and laughed for a few miles as I headed to the job. I don't know if she ever got a ticket, but just another day driving a truck that made me smile. The next one is an entitled People Story. Once upon a time, I was a property shepherd. Banks would foreclose on properties and assign our real estate office to nurse the houses through the pre-foreclosure, foreclosure, eviction, and post-eviction periods. Banks liked using realtors because we would essentially work for free. I did a lot of work, and our only payment was if we sold the property at the end and got a commission. No sale? The banks got a ton of free labor. There was a particular mansion, 8,000 square feet, membership rights to a private golf course. In a good market, it should be worth around $3 million, but during the foreclosure years, it was just under $1 million. The property was added to my list of around 900 assets at the time. Just another house, but a pretty good commission as a reward for taking so many of the not worth as much houses. So I go through the checklist I go through with every house. Make sure the city records list the right names and the right addresses. Make sure the house physically exists. In cases of fraud, occasionally they didn't. Make sure it hasn't burned down. Arson on houses facing foreclosure eviction was not unheard of. Is it occupied? Is the yard maintained? Is water freely flowing out of the windows? Is there a foot-thick wall of ice turning an open porch into a tunnel? I have a deep sense of loss over not being able to find that picture. Any code violations? Is the HOA foreclosing themselves for unpaid dues? HOA foreclosures take precedence over bank foreclosures, and one of my assignments was taken away because the bank lost it. Nobody had checked for an HOA lien, so I started doing it on everyone, plus a handful of other tasks. House was occupied. This particular one was well into the eviction phase, so I expected to have possession within a month. Easy peasy. Except what should have been a quick assignment turned into 5 long years. For 5 years, I did weekly occupancy checks on that house. Drive by, take pictures documenting the condition, making sure it was occupied and maintained, keeping an eye out for code violations, keeping an eye out for HOA liens, occasionally delivering messages to the bank offering checks of up to $25,000 if they would waive eviction and just turn the house over to the bank. Through me. Nope, it was their house. They were entitled to it. Nobody could make them leave. And their lawyer was making sure they didn't have to pay a dime for insurance, property taxes, or water sewer. The bank had to pay water, sewer, and the property taxes so they didn't lose the house to the city. And the bank had to assume the full insurance risk because the occupants weren't paying. I asked my legal contact how this was dragging on for so long and received an answer that it was technical, but basically the guy filed for bankruptcy, which automatically stays the eviction, and that takes a couple of months to work through the system. It would be discharged, so the eviction was back on, but then his wife would file for bankruptcy, he not being allowed to file bankruptcy until some waiting period. After her bankruptcy was discharged, he would file again. They went through a few cycles of this, but I was just the real estate guy. I didn't have a full picture of what was going on the legal scene. A couple of times, I was told that an eviction was scheduled and to stand by with my locksmith and trash out crew, but each time they got a stay of eviction somehow, so it was canceled. One day, their luck ran out. I was told to get over there, and as per standard procedure, the moment the bailiff told me he was done, secure the house. I arrive. There is about $200,000 worth of personal property already out on the lawn. I was ready to go, but then their lawyer came running up with a writ from the judge. The eviction was canceled immediately. The bailiff collected his crew and drove away, and I watched the occupants start to move their property, slightly damp from the drizzle, back into the house. Now comes the part where their entitlement satisfactorily bites them hard. Yet another eviction date is scheduled. Me, doing my weekly occupancy checks, see no sign of packing up and preparing to leave. They fully expected their legal tricks to work yet again, but this time they didn't. The bank's lawyer told me the eviction was 100% definitely on. The moves that worked before were not in play this time around, so it was a firm and definite date. No ifs, ands, or buts. I do my weekly occupancy check on a Thursday and notice that there are a lot of people going in, out of the house, and a large garage sale sign in the yard. Open to the public. Well, I'm the public, so I went in to take a preliminary glimpse of the house to give me an idea of how many bathrooms and other sinks would need to be winterized, etc. Only to be met with price tags on everything. I mean everything. Every sink, toilet, bidet, light fixture, granite and marble countertops, oak and mahogany cabinets, pedestal sinks, bathroom sinks with marble tops with underlighting. Even the solid oak doors on every bedroom and closet had price tags. Some fixtures were already gone. This is a 100% absolute no. Those fixtures belong to the bank, no question. They felt they were entitled to strip all 8,000 SQ feet as much as they could to get whatever cash they could, and they were about to do hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage to the house. I call the cops, explain that there is an impending eviction, and the occupants are stripping the house. Fortunately, I was in a city where they cared. Many didn't. So a squad car rolled up in just a few minutes. The guy in the dark uniform told the guy that this was not allowed. The sale was over and he had to stop stripping the house. The former borrower swore that he had no idea it wasn't allowed and promised to stop. I didn't trust him, so the next day I felt the house needed an extra weekly check. Sign still up. People still going in out of the house. Call the cops immediately and they are out in a few minutes again. This time the cop is pissed. Ordered everybody except the owner and his family. The cop let me look around and I spotted several items missing. About $15,000 worth that I immediately identified. Cop said the ignorance excuse didn't work because he was told yesterday, and if there was anything else missing at the time of eviction, he was going to jail. Monday morning comes. Time for the eviction. The house is empty of all personal property and missing a few of the fixtures. The bank, happy to be rid of him and not in the mood for yet another legal battle with him, and I think there were still some lawsuits over the house flying around, told me to just forget about it, inventory what was missing as best as I could, and proceed as normal. The bids to make the house livable came in at around $100,000, but the bank didn't want to bother. They sold the house for cash, as is for $1 million, even within 3 days of it being listed. With the repairs, it probably would have gone for $1.2 million, so not really worth the time or effort. The next one is an entitled parent story. I think me, 19F, and my dad's relationship is officially over. It's been over 2 weeks since we last spoke, in which our argument concluded in him telling me to burn in hell and me saying I hated him and that he was no longer my father. We have had many time periods in which he has not spoken to me before since I was 12, but had been forced to still greet him, which was met with zero response. I refuse to do that now. My father is a very angry, manipulative, and abusive man. He is impatient and heartless and only thinks of himself. This argument was my last straw. I had never felt so angry and hurt in my life. I am soft-spoken and my rage made me lose my voice. The tipping point was during the argument when he abolished all accountability for my shortcomings last year. For a quick rundown, I did not do very well in subjects my father had forced me to do. I was ignored and insulted, and my father refused to sign the paper with the subjects I wanted at 16, ultimately as much as I tried. In those subjects, I did not do great, and it is the reason I am on a gap year to do better for myself, and finally move on to study at university, which I will be going to this year. This I feel like was the turning point for my resentment towards him to quickly build up. I feel like he has failed me as a father in many ways, and the more I see my friends with their dads, the more I realize I truly have never really had a family unit. There is so much that he has done, and I've blocked out so much from my memory for my own sake. We have never done anything together, just the two of us. Never celebrated a birthday or been on holiday with him either, believe it or not. He doesn't like people, so never wants to go out for a dinner, but then never wants to do anything at home with you either. He used to call me names when I was younger, like an idiot or stupid. As I got older, he would comment on my body, saying stuff like, "Do you know how many calories are in that?" whenever I ate. I struggle with eating issues to this day, and my dad had a huge impact on that. Being skinny is something that I fear will never not leave the back of my mind. My dad has never really wanted to take the time to get to know me. He isn't supportive of me either, and I've always felt like I needed to hide parts of who I am to him. He used to say my depression was faking attention, broke my confidence, and when I had fainted one time from an overdose, he refused to take me to hospital because I would make social services take my sisters away. I can never be honest with my dad. I've had scary situations where grown men have been verbally abusive to me and still felt like I could not call my dad as he would find a way to blame me or isolate me. Speaking of isolation, God, does this man hate the idea of me having friends or any type of social life, constantly spamming me when I'm with friends or making me cancel plans just because I have to learn to say no. I'd stopped this for a bit before we stopped calling. As the eldest daughter, he loved to put my sisters in my back like they're my responsibility. My work schedule revolves around when I babysit, and I have been since I was 10. Why does a teenage girl need to be home almost 4x a week early to babysit? Because her parents can't be bothered to do a suitable work schedule for their own children? There's so much more, but to end it, I will say that last month I lost out on $550. for flights booked for me and my mum as her B-Day gift because we could not go, and guess who that was because, I'm just done. I'm tired and I'm sick of him. I hate being his daughter and I hate how I cannot experience what having a father is like. I'm angry and am sad that I cannot get in tune with my emotions about going to uni because it is covered by the fact that I will finally know peace being by myself with the expense of losing a relationship with my family. I cannot cry about him anymore. I just want him gone. To anyone reading this and in a similar position, please message me honestly. I feel so alone in my experiences sometimes. I do not tell my friends about home because I find it embarrassing and I have no relationship with my relatives who are also not great. It's hard. Anyway, thank you for watching.